Hey, before we start our journey together, I've got a few numbers that I want to share with you. The first one is 14,855. The second one is 8,401. Remember those. We're going to come back to them a little later. You know, I'm standing up here in front of you wonderful people today, and I'm going to talk to you about fulfillment in your life. And you're probably sitting there thinking, who is this guy? And why should I listen to him? Those are great questions. Let's answer a couple of those right now. I'm an ordinary guy. I could be your next door neighbor, guy you passed on the street on the way in here today. I'm just an ordinary Joe. In this case, an ordinary Elliott. The first 23 years of my life were controlled by intense fear. I was born into a struggling lower middle class family. My parents were great. Heck, we didn't even know we were poor. But they both had chronic illnesses that crushed us both financially and spiritually. I was an awkward kid and was subjected to a bunch of bullying. Probably because I had a weight problem. And it found me anywhere from overweight to morbidly obese. And that's a problem that I've struggled with the entirety of my life. In fact, I've gained and lost more than 1,500 pounds in my life. More really. It's more like 2,000. I don't count the 20, 30, and 40-pound losses in the real total. They have to be 50 or more to make it onto the tally sheet. By the time I entered my senior year of high school, I was on the precipice of 300 pounds. By the time that year ended, I was a slimmed down 180, and my dad had died. My mom left shortly thereafter, suffering from an intense depression. You know, with no parents and little hope, I descended into a rather dark place and made some poor life decisions. On New Year's Eve, 1980, I was high, drunk, and over 350 pounds. You see, I never thought I was good enough, strong enough, or smart enough to compete. This was fueled by fear and led to destructive living. On June 5th, 1981, fear was removed from my life. In its place, courage. An epiphany, to be sure. You see, I was sitting in a car in an unseemly section on the north side of Pittsburgh. I was terrorized. I was heading into a job interview, something I had done 5 or 6 times before, unsuccessfully. And all of a sudden, a voice said to me, "You have nothing to fear but fear itself." And I thought, Franklin Delano Roosevelt? No, it was God, I think. And it was pretty cool, actually. And I got out of the car and I started up the stairs to the interview room and I said, "You are strong enough, you are smart enough, and you are good enough." And then I told myself I'm not leaving this building today without a job. And I will never not have a job the rest of my life. And you know what? All that happened. Every bit of it. You know, before I even caught myself at the end of a long day of interviewing, I said to the senior manager, "You know, I promised myself I wasn't leaving here without a job, and I'd really like you to give me one right now." And amazingly, he said, "Okay, you start Monday." How about that? And you know, by the time I was 39, I sat on the management board of 2 divisions of a Fortune 500 company, the youngest and least formally educated person in the room. And then within 2 years of that, I walked away to continue my journey elsewhere. Then I spent the next 12 years of my life working with a small, mediocre, family-owned business, and we turned that into the 6th largest entity in the industry. And guess what? I walked away. to continue my journey somewhere else. Next 10 years, I started a successful coaching and consulting business, and along with my wife, we developed our business, and we had almost 400 employees when we sold it in 2018. And then I retired, and I became busier than I ever had been in my entire life. You see, the entirety of my life, I took time to volunteer. And I attacked volunteerism with the same passion and energy as I did my work. I stand in front of you today, a man who's had a full life, better than I ever imagined. Couldn't have imagined anything quite like it. It's the American dream personified, folks. So you're probably asking yourself, how did this ordinary guy live such an extraordinary life? Well, we're going to talk about that, but first we're going to talk about you. How's your life going? Great. And for everybody that says amazing, awesome for you. Some of you maybe not so amazing. Have you done more in your life than you ever thought reasonably possible? Is your life full? What if I told you there are vast resources out there, they're available to you, they're everywhere, and they're free? And in those resources is the key to fulfillment. You know, a pessimist says a glass is half empty, and an optimist says a glass is half full. I believe there are countless glasses. They're everywhere. They're just waiting for our discovery. But yet, many, if not most, don't bother to go look, or don't even realize them when they fortuitously stumble across them. It's amazing. They're out there, they're available to us, and we refuse to look or don't bother to look. Is it easy? Well, hell no, it's not easy. Nobody ever said it was going to be easy. God didn't say, I'm going to give you an easy life. What he did say was, I'm going to give you everything you need to live a life of abundance. And so he does. For me, being born in the greatest country ever, having wonderful parents and mentors, both blood and non-blood related, to help guide me, and an optimism that tells me that tomorrow can and will be better than today. These are the ingredients to fulfillment. So why do so many people fail to achieve that abundance they desire? Too hard? Life gets in the way? I think it's more than that. I think it's a failure to plan, coupled with an intense fear of the unknown. You know, life's an amazing journey. But before we talk about that, let's talk about what fulfillment might mean to each of us, because it might mean a little something different to each of us, right? For me, it's the inner peace and well-being that comes from winning. I love to win. And when I win, I love to teach other people how to win, thus setting off a powerful chain reaction. You know, this journey of life is the most important journey we'll ever take. We wouldn't get in our car without knowing where we were going, the route we were going to take, and most importantly, why we were going. But so many of us fail to consider any of this on the most important journey we ever take. And you know, just like any journey, we want that vessel that's going to get us there to be in tip-top shape. Like a car or an airplane, your body needs to be maintained properly. Our bodies are a gift from God. We must nourish our earthly tents with physical, mental, and spiritual exercise. For me, exercise for the body checks all three boxes. I've been exercising for 6 hours a week 6 days a week, an hour a day, since 2006. I know, it's not working, right? Actually, it is, you know. At 63 years old, I feel pretty darn good. I never have to go to the doctor. I don't have any sick days. I don't have any anxiety. I don't worry about too much. And more time for me to focus on finding fulfillment. Less time for all those counterproductive things that chalk up all of our lives all the time. So, we're going to go on this journey together with our healthy bodies, our healthy minds, and our healthy souls. And then, we're going to push through. We're going to need courage because you are going to get tested. And courage isn't necessarily bravery, but I guess you could be both courageous and brave at the same time. Courage to me means standing up for one's principles without exception. Now, there's two enemies that are going to come in here and try to derail you, and those are greed and fear. Greed tells us, I don't have enough. I don't have enough. I need more and more and more. Baloney. Baloney. And fear, likely is the most frightening four-letter word there is. Tells us we're not good enough, we're not strong enough, we're not smart enough. None of this is true. When we have the courage to push through, we can render greed and fear feckless. And then one day you're going to wake up and you're going to go, I'm winning. I am winning. And then, as I like to say, what we do when we win defines us. Because winning's just a tiny piece of it, folks. Just a tiny little piece. I hope you'll be driven to help others. You know, the need is so great. In this country, there's 327 million people. 35 million of them live in poverty. That's too damn many. You know, when you're gracious enough to give us this 3 hours together, during the 3 hours we're enjoying each other's company, 15 baby girls are going to be born that will suffer the horror of child abuse before they're 18. 6 young girls will be sold into sex trafficking. And 21 will die of a drug overdose. No, that's not right. It's 34. In 2020, it was 21. In 2021, it was 34. 50% increase. In these same 3 hours, 3 veterans are going to take their lives to suicide. Homelessness is at epidemic level. The mental health problems we have in this country are huge. And we hear very little about it. We're just too darn busy worrying about what bathroom we're going to use or what straw we're going to drink out of. Folks, it's time to stop worrying about your rights and start worrying about doing the right thing because they're very different. You know, when a guy that you haven't seen or talked to in 36 years invites you to his decommissioning from being a career military man, it was going to be really cool as a destroyer, I think, in the Boston Harbor. He invites you to that retirement, and unfortunately, due to a bureaucratic snafu, you end up not being able to go because the invitation didn't make it in time for you to get arrangements. And then 3 years later, he shows up on your doorstep. Huh. He says, I want to thank you for saving my life. I know I did a lot of drugs back in college, but I mean, come on. What are you talking about? He tells me the whole story. And I remember every stinking detail. To me, it was nothing. It was just what you did. To him, it was life-saving. That's fulfillment, folks. I want to introduce you to a woman that I'm going to call Jill, mostly because that was her name. And I haven't talked to Jill in over a decade. But I am Jill about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and I said, I want to tell your story as part of a speech. And she graciously said, if your speech is going to help anybody, I want my story to be part of it. I met Jill in Scranton, Pennsylvania. Woohoo! And Jill was in an abusive marriage with an alcoholic husband. I met her as part of an interviewing process. I immediately was taken to her, and I hired her on the spot. She quickly became one of the best employees we had. A year and a half later, my company decided we were going to move our offices to Pittsburgh. Jill was terrorized. She'd never imagined leaving her beloved Scranton. I coached her for, probably 2 or 3 months, and finally she said, I'm going to try it. And I said, you're going to love it. And I ended up in Clark Summit. Clark Summit in the house. I ended up in Clark Summit in a little restaurant with Jill and her sister. Jill excused herself. I still don't know if this was planned or not. Jill excused herself, and her sister and I were alone at the table for a moment. And she looked at me and she said, if anything happens to my sister, my family will have you killed. I said, well, good to know. Nothing bad's going to happen to your sister. In fact, nothing bad did. A whole lot good. She got remarried. 2 beautiful girls. A 30-year career at a Fortune 500 company, made it to the director level. She's living a full life, the one God wanted for her all along. But she had to push through her fear to get there. You know, last summer, interesting thing, I was doing a COVID clean out of my closet. COVID clean out on aisle 6. And I found a box, and in that box was an envelope that I'd never opened. And I said, I wonder what's in here. Opened it up. It was a note from Jill, written 21 years ago. Think about that, folks. It said, thanks for saving my life. I hadn't done anything. This got her to push past her fears. I was blessed because she stayed on the team. She's one of the best employees we had. She made the transition awesome. But to her, it was life-saving. That's fulfillment, folks. You all probably have stories just like those. You just don't know it. Dig in and look at them. Find them. Who helped you? Have you thanked them? If you haven't, get on it and get thanking right now. You know, it takes a bit of work to plow the field and sow the seeds of fulfillment. But I promise you, the harvest is great. And when you lift other people up, they'll be blessed. And you will be blessed. I promise you, it's true. I'm going to close by talking about responsibility. You see, I think it's all of our responsibilities for making the world just a little better for us having been here. Funny thing about responsibility is it's 2 words in one. It's response and ability. Y'all have the ability. What's your response? What's your response? If not us, who? If not now, when? Oh, that's right, those numbers. Almost forgot. Those are the numbers of my life. I lived in fear for 8,401 days. That second number is going up every day. And will continue to go up until God calls me home. You know, it doesn't really matter what your numbers are, folks. If you've been around for 1,000 days or 30,000 days, it's not too early and it's not too late. Because if you ain't dead, you ain't done. And the most important number we're going to talk about today is the number 1. and that stands for you. You can and will make a difference.